life and a healthy family. And I specifically gave this word balancing, and I specifically put this picture up because some people will say, balancing, how do you even balance? And we were just at a conference, we just came back from a five-day conference in Washington, D.C. And I ran into a colleague who is good friends with a mutual, another colleague that I know who is incredible. She has 4 kids. Now, they're all older now, but she has 4 kids. She has 2 practices. She is on every board known to man. She is running associations. She just seems like she has her whole act together. And I said to Kathy, gosh, Sharon just seems to never miss a beat. I don't know how she does it. Everything is always, just as it should be. She's involved in everything. She's running around. She's got 4 healthy kids. It just seems like she always has her act together. I wish I could be more like that. And she said, there was a time when she didn't have all this. There was a time when she, was not on all of these boards. She never attended a conference for years. I mean, I feel like every time I'm at a conference, there's Sharon. And she's just sort of my idol in how much she accomplishes. And I think it's interesting because the last time we did this workshop, it was a midday workshop, and we had about 9 or 10 moms in a semicircle. And I started the talk, and one of the moms said, "You always have your act together. I don't know how you do it." And I have to laugh because I see that in so many other people. And so it was kind of humbling that she saw that in me, because truly I don't feel that way at all. I have lots of mentors that I look at and think, gosh, I wish I could get it all together like them. So the point of balancing life and a healthy family is that we really set high expectations, particularly mothers. I think mothers seem to set a little bit higher expectation than others because we tend to be the caregivers. And tonight what my hope is that we're able to kind of have a blueprint of how to make choices, how to set priorities, and how to make the best choices for our family and balance our lives with healthier choices. So let's begin. So when you look at someone with balancing, and we're talking about balancing, a lot of times we'll think, that's impossible. You can't balance everything. It's absolutely impossible. But then you start to get looking at families that might seem like they have it all together, like the woman I just spoke about, or one of our patients who said, gosh, you look like you always have it together, Dr. Kate. And you start to see more people balancing, and you say, is it impossible? You're not sure, because it seems like people can do it, so how do they do it? And I usually have my flashlight, but I'm not going to step out of the camera for this. How people do it, what I've come to realize is they get really crystal clear on what their focus is. So when you look at someone balancing, there's nothing else that this cat is doing except being really crystal clear about balancing and really crystal clear about what his goal is or her goal is. So as a family, as parents, as a family unit, we have to be really crystal clear about what our focus is. When we talk about balancing, we're never really going to have a full balance, and we're always going to think someone's doing it better and try different things. But nothing is going to be exactly what we want it to be unless it resonates with us. We're never going to be fully happy with balancing until it fully resonates with how our values are. And this chart that I've handed out tonight is something that you can take home with you. You can fill it out here if you like. You can take it home and think about it. But what this is about is zoning in. If you take that flashlight, which I usually have, and you open it up, you'll see that it'll have this big ring around it. It'll light up the whole wall. But once you zoom in and once you focus that flashlight, it becomes this small, tiny speck of light. It's crystal clear in its focus. And it's the same here, is getting really focused. So I want to talk about how we can do that. And this is an activity that I guarantee if you take this and you really examine it. Now, my answers are not going to be maybe what your answers are. Maybe we might have some similar answers, I don't know. But I'm going to throw up a couple of mine just so you can kind of see how it works out. But this is more for you to start to examine, and viewers start to examine will actually get to see this chart, and you'll actually get to determine what your focus is. The first one that I start with is values. So when you look at your values, and you'll see it all the way there on the left side, you're looking at several columns. You're looking at what are your values, and then when you look at what your values are, you're going to look at 3 things to determine actions in the course of your life that will allow for those values to feel good or not. So I list them as go, slow, and whoa. Go values or go actions in your lives as it coordinates with your values is you determine what your values are, and whatever happens in your life that day, it feels really good to you. Your intuition says, this feels good, it's in line with how you feel you want your family to be or your health to be. The next one would be slow. It doesn't feel that great. I mean, you might do it, but I don't know, something doesn't feel great about it. You wouldn't feel great doing this all the time. It would resonate with your values. And then the last one is whoa. When this happens, it's terrible. You just know it doesn't feel right. This isn't something you would ever want to do, even just thinking about it, and you would avoid whatever it was because it just doesn't resonate with those values. So I'll show you some of mine, but let's do your values first. When you look at your values, you have to come up with a few. I've just put down a few. When I think of my family or my children, some of the values we have are optimum potential. That's not feeling fine. So if someone says to me, which happens sometimes with friends, it might be, you know, oh, well, my children might eat that, or why don't you let your children eat that, or why don't you let your children do this, or I do that and I feel fine, my kids are fine. We're not talking about feeling fine. We're talking about what's an optimum potential for you. So that's my goal here. It has nothing to do with how you feel. It has to do with your optimal health. What's your optimal human potential? The next one for me is connections. So that might be connecting with families, creating a community. That's important to me, a community of like-minded families. And then the other one, the last one there is character. So for me, I'm always thinking about these things when I'm talking to my children. These are 3 values for me, but you'll have values that you might have that will work for you. So go. When I think of things that feel really good, I put a couple up there. Optimal potential. For me, what feels really good is obviously chiropractic care for my family, for my kids, movement. We are always moving, we're always playing. They're not TV kids, they're not game kids. That's just not something we do. And nutrition. I'm very nutty about what they eat, and that's usually when I'll get a few comments too about what they're eating. My kids are fine, I'm fine, I've had this. And I can certainly always do better in this category, but I'm always thinking about that. What can I do to make better choices with nutrition? What can I do to make better choices with movement? When you have your values, it's easy to sort of pick out things that may, when you come into choices, things that may resonate with you and things that may not. Connections, things that feel good, or finding a community of like-minded people. Believe it or not, I find a lot of them here in the office that we can resonate with. And I didn't put up one for character, I just did a couple of them. So that makes me feel good about my choices. Can you think of any values that you have just off the top of your head? Someone might say, nutrition is a big one for me, or movement is a big one for me, or whatever it might be. You can't have a blueprint. Have you ever heard, or have you ever said yourselves, I know I have, I just don't have time for whatever. I'd love to be exercising more, I just don't have time for it. I'd love to be, I wish we could, you know, make a chiropractic appointment or a spinal workshop, I just don't have time for it. Whatever it might be, if you're finding that, what I've found when I've gotten more clear with my values, and it's something I'm always working on, but when I've gotten more clear with my values, I have less room for excuses, but you have to be more clear about what your values are. They might be similar to mine, they might be completely different than mine, I don't know what yours are, but this chart really has helped me to define those and to have less and less excuses. So it's easy, it's much easier to make decisions. So things that might feel not great. Maybe they'll happen once in a while, but I don't feel great about them. Television is a huge one for us. We have a television, but we don't watch TV, and actually coming back from the conference today, I'm thinking of just getting rid of it completely. It's hard to talk to Dr. Jason about that during football season though. But this is one of the big ones for me. I think when I look at this, when it doesn't feel right, and we know the average child watches about 4 hours of television a day now, the average young child. This is a biggie, especially with children now. And there's a lot we can go into with television, but for me, I know that them sitting in front of a screen certainly reduces their optimal potential. So I don't feel good about that. Maybe we'll watch a movie night once in a while, something like that, but it's not something that I like doing. When we talk about, raising kids that are caring, that are confident or conscientious of, the earth, of other people, of themselves, whatever it might be, I've realized that how I interact or speak to my child has a huge impact on that. So sometimes if I'm just really frustrated, there's a lot going on, I've noticed that I can say things or be quick to them and realize that that doesn't really fall in line with my values. So because I've had these values of, 3 big things that I'd like to instill in them, as soon as I parent differently from that, I can pick that up right away. I loved this story that I heard recently about a village in Africa, and when a baby is born, the whole village sings a song to this baby, and it's this baby's song. And when the child has some wonderful accomplishment, the whole village sings that song to the child. And then it goes on to say, when the child makes a choice that's not a good choice, a poor choice, maybe they hurt themselves, maybe they hurt someone else, the village brings them out into the center of a circle and sings their song to remind them of the person that they are. And that was really hit home with me for some reason, because it's different from take a time out, go sit in a chair. It doesn't fall in line with how I really would want to raise my children. So it got me thinking about, how do I interact with them? How do I speak with them? How does that fall in line with my values? So we'll make choices like this every day. And when you set your values, you'll be able to determine if it falls in line with them. The last one is whoa. This is one where right away, as soon as it happens, this just doesn't feel good to you. That's like a typical child's diet today. Actually, we had a recent talk about smarter grocery shopping. So if you've seen that one, or if you were at that one, you'll know that one of my big things is food dyes, which is fantastic because that knocks out 90% of the terrible food that kids eat. My kids don't eat food dyes. That's just my whoa. It may not be for other people, but I know some of the science behind it and the research behind it and how it affects their neurology. So it's a whoa for me. McDonald's. My kids have never been to McDonald's. Maybe they'll choose to go to McDonald's at some point in their lives, but they've never been to McDonald's. It's a whoa for me. May not be for other people. Technology. Technology is a big one because we're spending so much screen time as adults and as children, not just children, not just adults, but as a unit. So one of the things with connection, and that's a whoa for me with connection, something as simple as when we're at the kitchen table having a meal, there aren't any cell phones there. That could be something simple that we've implemented because that doesn't connect with our value of connecting. We don't spend time in front of the television as a family unless it's a special movie night. We don't spend time in front of the computer as a family because that's not a connection thing for us. I even have a hard time having my kids do reading books for school on the computer. I can't wrap my brain around that. We open a book and read it. So that's a whoa for me. So it helps you understand some points in your day. A huge one is overscheduling. So I love some of these things. So many of us will schedule ourselves based on not necessarily what we want, but what we feel that we need. We're trying to keep up with our schedules. And I hear this a lot amongst parents is there's so much going on. There's no time for anything. I feel like we're always running around. So I ask questions like, if I ask any parent if they would have more running around or less running around in their lives, they would say less running around, right? But we as parents get to make that schedule. Today, it's so incredible how much is going on, especially in a young child's life. It seems like we're overscheduled with so much. So if it doesn't resonate with you, if it doesn't fall in your values, so for me, connections, if it doesn't fall in that value of we're all running around in different places, that has to be a whoa or at least a slow for me. I have to know when to say no about certain things. And know where to put my time, my energy, and my money, frankly. If I ask a parent if they would want more medicine and chemicals in their child's system or their system or less, they would say less, right? That's normal. The less you can have in your system, the better. But if we're saying when a child has maybe a slight fever, we're running to reduce that fever with a Tylenol. Fever is a good thing for infection, which is not the topic for this workshop, but or if we have a small ache or pain, or sometimes we're taking preventative. Before I was a chiropractor and I was doing all my marathon training, I would take a couple of Advil before I went for a long run just to prevent any aches or pains before. And to me, I just don't comprehend why I would have done that, but that can be sort of a common thing. If I asked any parent if they want more stress in their lives or less stress in their lives, they would say less, right? But we increasingly put excess expectations on our families and ourselves, most importantly as parents. And I think mothers put the most stress on themselves of trying to hold it all together. One thing that I took from this 5-day conference, and I learned from PhDs and chiropractors and MDs and nutritionists and biochemists, I mean the midwives, the gamut was just a huge range. And one thing I learned is that, and this is something that really resonated with me, is one person can't get well in a family unit. The whole family has to be well. The whole family has to make changes. One person cannot make actions to get well and then go home to a family that might be stressed out or eating poorly or running themselves ragged with schedules or not exercising or not getting adjusted, whatever it is. The family unit has to be together and making healthy decisions. And there's a million decisions that we can make in our health. If I asked parents if they want more interaction with their children or less interaction, they would say more, right? But I look back at the rule that we had to make recently about no phones at the dinner table. We have really young children, but if I think about fast forwarding maybe 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, whatever it might be, where's that interaction going to be? So we have to think about those things. Let's see. So when you're putting yours together, kind of defining your values first is going to make all the difference. One thing I hear with mothers and, okay, mostly mothers, not really fathers, but mostly mothers is, oh, as long as they're okay, you know, I'll be fine. And I just had the conversation with a mom last week who's got chronic headaches. And her thing was, I just have chronic headaches, but I just want them to be okay, and I'll just figure it out. And that's sort of like the mother's mantra, I feel like. I feel like we're always not, and not thinking of ourselves, not taking care of ourselves. And I think that was one of the most powerful things that came through at this conference with all the research that we were reading and all the information we were receiving, is that if the family unit, if the parents, if the mother in particular, because the mother tends to run that, and the mother tends to put everyone else first before herself, that has to be just as much a priority as others. Do you have any questions about this looking at this, or any thoughts? No?
I think it's helpful always to evaluate what your values are and how, you know, just to take time to sit down and do something like this. Is hard to do for me.
Yes.
But it's always helpful when I do reassess and think about these things, because they're really important. Otherwise, you just kind of go with the moment, and one day goes to the next. And
Yeah. I love
having a
that
plan
you-
is a good thing.
I love that you said that. I love that. I don't know if you realize how important that is, what you just said, but this is the big deal, right? We don't have time to take time for ourselves. I love that you said that, because just taking 30 minutes just to reflect on it is huge. That's like the biggest teaching moment right there, because we don't even do that. We don't even allow ourselves to have that time to reflect. So that was great. Thank you for sharing that.
On a specific example, and it's hard to do consistently. The weeks that I make a list of what meals I'm going to serve for the week, we eat so much healthier, and I spend less, and it's quicker to go through the grocery store. But not every week. I don't always get to do that. But I try, whereas if I don't do the menu ahead of time and shop according to what we're going to have each night, I just go to this store and that store, and we eat much healthier. It's much more stressful to prepare, and we spend more. So
Yeah.
it's kind of that idea, the 10 minutes, 15 minutes that it takes. And I'm very inconsistent on that. But that's an example of something where I find if you have the plan in the beginning, it's helpful
Follows
to
through.
everyone, especially yourself. 'Cause
Yes.
I'm the one that does the cooking and the shopping, so I have my plan. But I really am inconsistent, because some weekends I just don't get to it.
It's true. Do you feel like if you put that as a value, do you feel like you might be able to see more consistency with it? Do you think? Yeah. For me, that's a big one for me too. Is some weeks I'm better than others, and planning that out is huge. So, yeah, that's a great example. A really good example. I think probably everyone can relate to that. So that's a big one. So there's lots of moments and times in your day and in your life that you'll have them. I find them in something as simple as the million birthday parties we get invited to, the food that's there, the places they are, all the way to scheduling, all the way to what we do in this house and thinking about how to improve in here. And you're never done looking at things. You're never done changing and improving. So going from it's impossible to it's impossible to I think it is possible. If we understand that balance is not a balance, balance is always moving, it's always in motion, it's always dynamic, just like your health is. So the more we can be crystal clear on our values, the more we can feel like we're succeeding in our health choices for ourselves and for our families. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a fantastic night.
Thank you.